Right, so this is going to be a bit of an explanation, or an exploration of how we might offer library services in a more apocalyptic scenario.
Is it not working?
Disappointingly, the clicker is not working. I'm going to have to resort to the mouse. So, I'm a live action role player, generally abbreviated to LARP. It's a little hard to explain and I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm just going to sum it up. It's basically like a murder mystery weekend, but you've got multiple events, generally connected like a TV series. They'll take place over a weekend, and then we'll do another one in a few months' time. Instead of investigating a murder, your characters are dealing with problems like zombies, raiders, soldiers, and generally the kind of problems you might get if society has collapsed. At least that's what we're doing in this one. This game is called Forsaken. The idea is that about a year ago there was a zombie-based apocalypse and the society has fallen. We are the survivors trying to cope in the midst of that. So I'm playing a librarian. Obviously. There are people playing far more obviously useful characters than this. But I wanted to play a librarian because I'm interested in library information services and how we can provide those. And it's interesting to break it down to basically where you start with nothing. And I'm basically in this building a library from the ground up, based around the needs of a small and quite desperate community. And I'm interested to see how that's going to work in a world that's under such pressure. I am also a massive nerd, and that may have a factor in this. So, it's a game, there are some rules, and the constraints on this are quite useful for making sure I do this properly. So, at the end of the world, supplies are somewhat limited. Cities are currently inaccessible. As such, getting good access to books is not particularly easy in the first place. We're able to go between events, we go out and scavenge. Effectively, we write an email saying, this is what I'm going to do between these events, and then get a response back saying what we get. Because I'm playing a librarian, I can also find books alongside other things I scavenge. While people are going out looking for food and medical supplies and other useful things, I'm also looking for books. There are also books that turn up at events, and I'm trying to capture those and add them to the collection as well. And everything I have needs to fit into a small rucksack. And this is really important because at the end of the day, we might be attacked at any moment. We have to be able to pick up the library and move it extremely quickly. So I had to think about collection development. Obviously, you can't have everything, but also there's a limited amount of access to what you can get. So we have to think about what the community really needs most desperately. As a result, I went to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Already you'll see that we've got a bit of a problem. The Wi-Fi has gone. So up to the next most important thing, physiological needs. So food, water, shelter, warmth, that sort of thing. I figured at the start that's going to be the most important stuff to provide. And then we're on to sort of safety, security, and stuff like that. The higher areas of the pyramid, not my concern right now. There's definitely some space for some more sort of self-esteem, self-actualization based books later on, but that's quite a bit later on at the moment. Things are pretty desperate. So for the first tier, this is what I've managed to pick up so far. Survival Basics Guide is very good, contains lots of how to build a shelter, how to make an oven that will cook through the power of the sun, that sort of thing. Food for Free, little tiny book that you go out and you just, if you want to know which mushrooms to pick, which berries are good, what's going to be in season when. I figure that's a good one. It's also tiny, which is a massive factor in this. If I can get small books, it's really helpful. Most popular discovery from that is that it might fix the coffee shortage because it teaches you how to make acorn coffee. SAS Survival Guide, loads of these all over the country, probably very easy to pick up. Also, none of them have ever actually been used in anger. So that's got lots of useful sort of emergency first aid, building a shelter, generally surviving in the wild kind of stuff. And easy pickings has been my happiest find so far. Because it's a guide to lockpicking. It's wonderful. It's got a little panel on the first page that says you're not supposed to use this for anything illegal or immoral. Don't use this to steal stuff. They've called it easy pickings. But yes, the point being that a lot of stuff is going to be behind locked doors. Making a lot of noise could put you at risk. So this is a skill that people might actually benefit from. So at the moment that's being used by someone to learn how to pick locks in the case that we can actually use that in anger. Next one up the tier, safety needs. This bit needs development. I've not really got enough for this yet, but we've only just started. I figured a road atlas was probably a good way to start with this. We need a map, we need to know what's around us. If we know that there's a group of survivors holed up in Leicester, we need to know which way Leicester is and how to get there. But of course, the terrain has changed somewhat. So this is currently being edited by the community. So if we know that there's a military encampment somewhere, we'll mark that on the map. If we know that an area's been overrun by zombies, we'll mark that on the map. Other things for this section, thinking we're going to bring in a lot of medical books. That's something that we're finding we need lots of people are getting injured. We've got some medical professionals, but a few textbooks or something could help teach some other people how to deal with sort of basic problems. We've got a fiction section. This is it at the moment. Mostly because there are more significant priorities right now, but I am looking to develop this. Some of them are being kept because of literary value. Mostly they're being kept because I found them and I figured someone would probably want to read them. These have actually been fairly popular so far. I'm hoping to build this out a bit more because one of the other things people are finding that they need is something to help relax them, something to calm them down a bit. And a good book might help just help people to ignore the dangers of the world for just a little while. We do patron-driven acquisition. I've got a little notebook and I write down anything that people say they need. At the moment, surgical charts are a big thing. Our group of survivors is very lucky, they have a surgeon. Unfortunately, surgeons rely on such things as charts that show you the exact layout of internal organs or sort of bone structures of a hand, something like that. These are turning out to be quite hard to find. They are quite hard to find now, as I'm doing it in the real world. But I'm hoping to build up a collection to have some of those. Medical and first aid books, as I already said. Religious texts are the other thing that have been requested a couple of times. That's partly because it seems to be the end of the world and people are trying to get hints about what's coming next. And partly just for general spirituality and support in a crisis. But we're on the lookout for other things that might benefit from a library book. Am I having some problems? More than a few. Do we lend our books out? Books are going to be going off with people into quite dangerous situations. Every situation at the moment is quite a dangerous situation. If people go off and they don't come back, that's a library book lost. It's also a person, and that's very sad, but it is also a library book, and I have to replace that. We've decided in the end, I have decided that I am lending books out. 2 reasons for this. One, if I don't, then the books probably won't get used, and there's not that much point to it. And the other one is I don't want to carry them. Because they slow me down, whereas if I can distribute the collection around, then everyone's carrying 1 book as opposed to me carrying 10. Also, it means long term we can have a larger collection if we keep it in circulation. Book theft. Book theft has already happened. I left a pile of library books on a table, and the Ian Rankin book and the John Keats book both disappeared. I've got the Keats book back. Someone picked it up thinking, oh, this is something we just arrived in a new location, so they thought there was something here, so they picked it up, thought it was interesting. But when I explained, they've now given it back. No one has fessed up to the Ian Rankin. I think that one might be gone forever. I would be very interested to see if that turns up again. There will be a solution to this in that I'm going to start writing in the books who to return them to. And if that doesn't work, then I may have to look into getting some collections assistants, possibly scary ones.
To your 5 minutes now, Karen.
Okay. So, plans for the future. As I say, we need a fiction section. And the other thing that's been requested from the group is that we start looking at having a book club. Again, it's a stressful environment. People need something to take their minds off of it. Problem with the book club is I need multiple books of the same, multiple copies of the same book, which makes it slightly harder. I'm not sure what book to pick for this one. I'm very open to suggestions on that. So, that's a whistle-stop tour of the Forsaken Library. Does anyone have any questions? I suspect there may be some. Or does anyone have any suggestions on what you might add to the collection in the event of a zombie apocalypse?
A guide on how to survive the zombie apocalypse.
A guide on how to survive the zombie apocalypse. There is the zombie survival guide. I don't have a copy, but there's definitely one floating around in the game somewhere. I am trying to get a copy. Yes?
When you say you find these things, where are you finding them?
Right. So the mechanics of the game are fairly simple in that in between events, I will send an email to the organisers saying, I'm going scavenging for this sort of stuff, and they'll write back saying, okay, you get this stuff and this many books, and they'll just let me pick them. So I'll then go to a second-hand bookshop or Amazon and I'll just pick them up. There are also books that appear at a game. At a game, we'll turn up to somewhere like a scout camp or somewhere that we've hired, and the refs will have set up the game and will have left some useful items around, and some of those might also be books that I will then hoover up and add to the collection.
Any other questions?
Yes?
Going back to survival here, how do you communicate then on the ground? How does that all work? How do you
Well, mostly sort of we communicate at the event. The event's going to last either a day or a whole weekend, and we'll be in one location, and we'll talk as a group and sort things out. I am the only librarian at the moment. I may recruit some extra people to help if this starts becoming a massive endeavour. But yeah, at the moment, lending books is. I will stand in the middle of the camp and shout, I have these books to lend now. I'd like to borrow these books. The next session is going to be interesting because it's the first time I'm trying to get any of them back. And we will see how well that goes. I suspect that maybe one or two that have already been lost, in which case I'm going to have to start getting a bit more harsh about it.
What's your lending policy to zombies?
No, absolutely not, under any circumstances. They do nasty things to the books, they come back in an awful state. No lending to zombies.
How do you get involved in this?
So live action role playing is a hobby I've been in for a decade or so now. You can just there are events I can connect people with. If anyone's interested, I can connect you with various groups. Zombie apocalypse is just one of the sort of settings. There's fantasy ones and sci-fi ones and all sorts of other weird and wonderful settings. And you make a character beforehand, you define who you want to be in that world. There are usually some rules that you'll have to learn. But mostly you'll turn up, play that character for the weekend alongside a lot of other people. Yeah.
You must have like a really interesting wardrobe. What's your wardrobe?
I do have an interesting wardrobe. I have a very large cupboard and some other boxes and stuff full of different types of kit from a variety of eras, and some masks for playing things like goblins and other weird creatures. Also, weapons is the other thing. Often these are violent scenarios, so you can't go around and hit your friends with actual swords, but you can get a padded sword with which to go and hit your friends safely.
I think we should all get involved. It sounds brilliant. Has anybody else got anything? No? Well, thank you, Alec. That was really, really good.